So it's um the only thing we have to fear is giant man-eating spiders. So I'm going to explain all of the English paradoxes that people keep talking about. That's why I'm here today. Also because this is my bedroom, I just woke up. So, um, first of all, something people really hate. Hamburger. So, people seem to really hate this word because it's a burger, but it doesn't have ham. Why do you call it that? Well, when you take out of this thing, which is a common ending to add to a word, you now get Hamburg. That's a city in Germany where they made the hamburger steak. That's why it's called a fucking hamburger. Alright, stupid. Oh, it's not kind of pineapple. People get mad at it, and it's not even that, like, every language it calls it ananas. And then we say pineapple in Spanish. No, people are mad because it's not an apple. But guess what? It's a pineapple because it has pines, like a pine cone, and it grows like an apple. It's just another fruit, and they just got lazy. It's like saying grape and grapefruit, apple and pineapple. That's all it is. It's got pines like a pine cone, and grows like an apple. That's pineapple. So now, read. Where are you going with this? Um, red. Read. I don't really have to write down 4 times, but still. Um, so people are really mad because this is read, but this is lead. Except this is lead and this is red. Why is it like that? Well, because English is confusing, but it's that at some point you need to change how the thing goes because not every word has a different spelling for different points in time. So you read something, it's present. You read something, that's the past. And they already had it. Because you could just say, hey, red. Except no, because that's already a color, and it doesn't look as much like the original word. So they kept that, and it's red. It's red. Red. And it gets simplified. That's a lot of why there's a bunch of English paradoxes. Like all the silent letters. We simplify them. That's why it's like that. Let's look at another one. One thing that I will say, yes, kind of confusing. Um, Bologna. This is somehow baloney. I don't know how to pronounce it like that. No, because here there's a G and an N. Grammatically, the G would be silent because of that. And so now the O is pretty much a letter away from the A, so it's pronounced O, and then the A, I have no clue. I have no clue what it is like that. I'll give you that. But and also, something really cool about English is that it's developed from several languages over time. Um, Romans went to go speak with the Celtics, and the Romans pretty much formed a language from Rune together and made English, which then developed over time with like Latin, French, and the Latin, German, French, and over time just kept taking things from French. That's why we have a lot of fancy things, like restaurant. I'm pretty sure there's French. Anyway, um, and it still somehow has like genuine grammar rules that no one pays attention to. Like, don't get mad at the language being confusing if you're not paying attention. Like, if you're in a class and you're not paying attention to a word the teacher's saying, of course you're going to be confused. Pay attention to the actual word. You guys are mad because you were taught to sound out a word. You sound out a word and you're confused now. If you actually pay attention, you can see it's not just single phonetic, because you can't just sound out a word. Because if you're in kindergarten and you're taught to sound out a word, how are you gonna pronounce this word? It's an A, so it makes the A sound hate. No, hate, because it's a vowel. It's a single letter away from another vowel. So now it's pronounced with its own main sound, its main vowel sound. And this thing is an E, which is commonly silent at the end, unless you're speaking German. Meanwhile, this, there's nothing at the end, and this is not a very weak consonant, so it's not hate, it's pat. Sounding out things doesn't work very much if you don't know the grammar. And something I just want to bring up. GIF. I'm pronouncing it GIF. If you don't like that, shut up. That's not what I'm talking about. This. People talk a lot about, like, is it G or E? I don't know how you say that. Which, I don't really argue with the JG sounds, you know? I don't know. They both have very good points on either side. But something that I have to say is F is a very weak consonant. There's weak consonants. And so because of that, this thing, it's a weak consonant, so this thing is just the letter away, has a weak consonant to the end. So, grammatically it should be jive, except it could also be gif. It could be jif, jive, we don't know. Technically, it doesn't have to be pronounced I. It could be I, but grammatically it makes more sense, and that's something no one talks about, because you guys don't know grammar. Because there's weak consonants, and then there's just there's very hard consonants, there's weak consonants, and then there's just transparent ones like H. Like, F is a very notable weak consonant. I'm just gonna make up a word here. If there's two of them, which often F does have to have two of them because it's a weak consonant, then it doesn't go to the end. Meanwhile, if it's a very weak consonant and there's only one, so this I can get to the end, and the end is kind of viewed grammatically as a vowel despite not being there, like saying zero is like a what's the word? An even number. When it's like literally worth nothing. This is technically a vowel, even though there's no vowel in sight. There's nothing at all. So this is hyph. This is hith. L is also a very weak consonant. Except they kind of go on a scale because of how L can be used. So of course you can have two L's, and that makes a bigger barrier. Nothing gets through that. But if you have only one, it's very likely for it to be Heil now, but it's still more likely to be ill than if it was an F. I'm just gonna say, even though the creator of GIF says it's GIF, no one's gonna agree on that. There's technically no official way of saying it because the majority, it's like in Frindle. Like, if the majority of people call something a different thing, that's what it's called now. So there's no real way of figuring out the actual name of GIF and GIF. There's no name for it anymore. It's just letters GIF. Something I want to bring up. There used to be a letter in, I think it was Middle English. This. Yod kind of looks like a 3. They used Roman numerals, so they didn't have a mistake, but it used to make the Y and the G sound. And some, like, those aren't very closely related sounds, but what I think happened was that when the Romans were in Jerusalem nearby, there was like Arabic places, and they took this letter right here, which made the G sound, GH. They just pretty much took that and simplified it to G. G is closely related to the J sound, so then it then was J and G sound. And then over time, through accents, the J turned into a Y, like in many other languages. Many other European languages do that. So they did that, and now it's the Yod. Except, over time, they actually adapted it over time and closed the circle. And now that's an insular G. It makes the G sound. It doesn't make the Y sound. And I'm not entirely sure if it made the J sound or not yet. But the Y was just its own letter at that point. We then got the Y back. So something people really don't like is the letter H. Because every letter has its sound, like one of its sounds in the name, except for W, because something people don't like, it looks like a double V. Well, when they made a W, V and U were the same letter. They just did this. Some people drew it like this, but it was mainly this. It made the U, V sound. And so when they were making W, they wanted a W sound. So they started using two U's next to each other as a substitute until someone was able to find a good letter. They went over to the Norse and they found a letter called Win, and they changed that to look more Romanized, and people were more used to using the W, and it looked too much like a P, so they just had this, put them together to make its own letter without having a space in between, and now there's a W, which other languages say double V because they're the same thing. And H people say doesn't have its letter in its name unless you're British and say H. Well, I say H. I don't say H at the beginning of H. That's confusing. But it's not H. It's H. There's secretly an H right there that you pronounce, but you don't pay attention to it. It's a very weak consonant. Incredibly weak consonant. Also, people do talk a lot of the time about, like, there's New York. What about Old York? Yeah, during the American Revolution, New York was just named after a place in England called York. That's why. I'm not going to write that down. That was very simple. But if there's any more questions, then I'll just explain those next time. I'm trying to see if I can think of more things. Something I really like is how in Greek can sometimes have different sounds for letter combinations, but mainly it's because we have E. This can make the F and E sound. Meanwhile, Greek has letters epsilon and eta, which make E and F. They have letters for specific sounds, and letters have singular sounds. And something that happens a lot is there's a whole community called Kursk, because people use Greek letters very incorrectly just because of how they look. Like to write an O, they sometimes use an omega. That can be correct sometimes, but sometimes they also use a theta or a theta. Just because it's circular and it looks cool and it's in the Greek alphabet. It's in the Greek alphabet, looks cool, use it, I guess. Even though that's not how it works. This right here is not an E. It's an S. It's a sigma. And if that was an E, I don't think that would evolve to be this. Like, sure, you can imagine that they just, like, fold it and then these two lines go together. But that's not really something that seems very likely, to be honest. I don't think it transforms into an E over time. Also, the letter C is called C, even though it usually makes the K sound while sometimes making the ch sound. Well, the sigma has two lowercase versions. This one's used for everywhere, and this one is the one at the end of a sentence. Well, normally when a language evolves from Greek, they'll usually use the end sigma. And so I guess just the name changed over time from sigma to sigma, and then just C. And so now we have the letter C because of that. Even though we didn't really need to get that, it was just when the Romans started adapting more to Greek. Even though we already had K and S. I think some letters we should have is in Old and Middle English, we had a letter we got from Rome. It was called thorn. It makes the TH sound. So it's thorn. And then the F sound. I don't think we really use this sound anymore. But it looks cool. I won't say to bring it back because we don't really use that sound anymore. There's no use for it because we added people just argue F or thorn. Because people just use them interchangeably. I keep saying F because it's easier. It's F. It's like a thud in your mouth. And people really hate this one letter. I don't know why. Medial S. It makes the SH sound. It's medial S. It should probably be like esh. Now I don't really like accents in letters because you have to remember like all of the letters and then you have to remember all of the accent marks and what they do to each letter. However, we could benefit from that by just like an old or middle English and Spanish one. They did this. They added a macron onto the top. I think it's called a macron. And it made the E sound, not the S sound. However, other times they use that symbol, it would just mean there's like another consonant there. I don't know, I don't see the point of that. But they also had this letter, the ash. It's pronounced the A. It makes the A sound again. And Elon Musk used that letter in his son's name, and he said it's pronounced Ash. That's just the letter name. That's not how you pronounce it. He just has the A sound in his name, not the Ash. And I don't really like the way the letter looks, especially since it's just two letters together, and it looks bulky and it's weird. And here's the F. I put it lowercase for some reason, but it made the oi sound, which oi is not really its own sound. Many sounds are actually just multiple sounds together. This is O-E, oi, oi. Because it's an O and E put together, and yet somehow this is not A for A. It's just A. I don't know where that comes from. Something about German. I heard that this was supposed to be pronounced as a sharp S. But when I started learning German in shit. Sorry, I was interrupted. So, when I started learning German, I thought this was supposed to be a sharp S, as many people say. But someone said it's just the S and Z put together. Except, S is often pronounced as sh or z. I barely even see it as a normal S sound. So this isn't s. It's just s. It's just normal S. Even though some people say it's S and Z. People say it's the, people said SZ. Even though I was taught it was, starts with S. Which just means sharp S. From what I've heard. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't done that part yet. But yeah, let me go back to the whole burst stuff. Yeah, so people use this as O. Sometimes that's correct because the omega makes the O sound. However, they have an entire O equivalent that I think sometimes actually does make O, but usually is ah, which are both O sounds. And often people use the gamma for a T or an R or an F. Honestly, they don't have the letter D gamma anymore. However, it looks a bit more like an F, though kind of like a 7. I don't write 7s like that. But it's not really used anymore. It's not really that sound of F, but it's a bit better. However, F, phi, they technically don't make the exact sound, the exact same sound, because we have F, they have phi, it's PHF. Technically, those make different sounds. It's a bit harder. It's that's hard to tell the difference, but oh well. And actually, I heard that like over time, the beta turned from a B sound to a V sound, but we kept the B sound, and the delta used to have the D sound, but now it has the F sound. F, that's what it's saying. A letter I don't like from Old English, well, it's more like it stayed for a long time, but it was this. Sometimes they would just write an F, sometimes they would write something like this, sometimes this. And that was a soft S. They used a weird looking F to represent that. Some ways people would write the medial S was this, or I like this because you can tell the difference between this more than like any other letter. That can be mistaken for an S very easily. This just looks weird. You might think it's an F. This kind of looks like an R. This one is just its own thing if you're used to it. Something I don't like is how I feel like the main sound of a G is the G sound, but I might just be thinking that because that's like the unique sound it makes. No other letter does that. But yeah. But if it's called that, why don't we call it the G? Like gamma says G, why do we say G even though we already have a J? Which I'm pretty sure the J just came from like, because they had I, which then turned into I, which turned into I and J, which likely proves my Yoke theory that it was just the Y sound over time, because I does not make the J sound, but it can make the Y sound. A lot of the time, like eon, like something at the end. Eon. It's E, but it's like I, and it has to add that. It's not eon, it's eon, because accent. Eon. Something that kind of makes fun is the letter N, which everyone calls N, but it's actually called an N. It's, this thing. It makes the NG sound, because that's technically a different sound, but you can't just make an NG sound without it being this sound, so you don't really need the letter, especially since over time it would fade, and so it would just cause this, causing confusion. So it's just really pointless. I do think that it would be good if we had a letter like this. Sure, it's an accent, I don't really like them, but this makes the ch sound. CH. That's a good letter to have. And I'm gonna be honest, like, in certain contexts, letters can make different sounds. So I'd say that, J should make the J sound and the ch sound. And also, if you make the J sound, and then instead of just like J, should you try and like transition it, you do that, and then to SH, J, CH, SH, J. It's very similar, so I think that J should be able to have all of those sounds, depending on the context. Maybe you could do like a JS is SH, you know, since it's kind of like S as well. Yeah. So that's my opinion on things. Yep. Goodbye. God damn it.